Episode 77 of the Habs Culture Podcast. My name is Justin Schwartz, and I'm alongside my good friend Liam Baum. It's been a little while since we've talked Canadiens hockey, and that seems to be, a recurring theme when you get to this point in the season where the Habs are obviously playing, let's call it not meaningful hockey. They're playing somewhat meaningless hockey, but their games matter in terms of where they're going to end up in the standings, but we'll get to that a bit later. Their last 4 games, they've gone 0-4, losing 3 of those games to Western Canadian hockey teams in the Canucks, Oilers, and Flames, and they lost one of those other games to the Boston Bruins in overtime. Now, obviously, it's not fun to watch the Habs lose. We know that. But obviously, if we're looking at it from a macro perspective, it's probably for the better. And at the end of the day, at the end of this season, I think we can both agree that there's going to be a lot of things trending in the right direction, whether it's the NHL draft, where we can comfortably say that the Canadiens will have a good pick, or whether it's free agency and maybe Kent Hughes and his brass will make a few moves, or whether it's even unsigned free agents like Lane Hudson, who are on the brink of maybe showing what he's got in the tank at the end of the Canadian season, maybe in 5 or 10 games from now. So obviously, it's not extremely fun to watch the Canadiens at this point in time, but I think there's a lot pointing in the right direction. So Liam, with that being said, how are you feeling about the Canadian situation right now? Is this something to get excited about, or are you still kind of, not enjoying watching Canadiens games right now?
I mean, in the last handful of games, I gotta say, from a viewer's perspective, the Habs still make it pretty exciting, considering the fact that they've lost a couple guys to injuries and they're sitting at the bottom of the table here. But against good teams, the Habs just somehow like to stay in these games and bring it to overtime or shootout. And again, from a viewer's perspective, this is amazing. We're watching some good hockey towards the end of the season. It's late March now, and obviously no playoffs are on the table here, but at least we have some sort of excitement. Going back to what you said about Reinbacher and Hudson, Reinbacher actually makes his debut today, I believe, for Laval, which is very exciting. Maybe we'll have to tune into that. And then Lane Hudson's season coming down to the end here. He was actually just nominated too as a Hobie Baker nominee, which is also very exciting. But going back to the fact that the Canadiens are playing, a little bit less meaningful hockey right now. Yes, but again, for the tank, we want to lose these games and have the best possible future for the long term and, as well as the short term. So, again, maybe not the most exciting hockey right now, but they're keeping it close with these good teams.
And Liam, with that being said, I think we can both agree that the Canadiens might be keeping it a little bit too close recently, having picked up 32 of their last 62 points in overtime and shootout decisions. Now, obviously, you know, you can't tell the Canadiens and their players to stop playing hockey because that's what they're getting paid to do. And at the end of the day, they're passionate players and athletes just like the rest of the league and the rest of the league's players. But it definitely is, from a fan perspective, looking at that, more than half of their points coming from shootout and overtime decision games. It kind of sucks because at this point in time, the Canadiens sit 26th in the league with 62 points, like I mentioned before, 1 point ahead of Arizona, 2 points ahead of the Ottawa Senators, and 4 points ahead of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now we can erase the Anaheim Ducks, erase the Chicago Blackhawks, and erase the San Jose Sharks from catching the Montreal Canadiens in the standings. But that's a very, very close race. And if you take back some of those games that the Canadiens brought to overtime or shootout, we might be sitting 29th in the league with the 4th best odds at getting the first overall pick. What do you have to say about that? And what are your thoughts on, or do you think there's a possibility that the Canadiens actually end up in 29th place and end up with maybe the 4th best odds to draft first overall in the upcoming draft?
That's definitely what I hope's going to happen. I don't know if it will happen because personally, I believe the Canadiens are a better overall team and have a bigger fight in them than Columbus, Ottawa, or Arizona. But it's definitely a possibility considering the gap is only 4 points. But, this happened last year where the Canadiens just got a whole lot of points from overtime and shootout losses, which is not very helpful because that's the difference between landing a guy like Connor Bedard and David Reinbacher. This speeds up your rebuild so much that you're no longer a bottom team in the next 2-3 years, where maybe in the Canadiens case they're still at the bottom. But again, this season, all these overtime and shootout points that are accumulating is the difference between Macklin Celebrini and, I don't know, maybe a guy like Berkeley Catton or Caden Lindstrom. So obviously I'm not the biggest fan of it, but again, going back to what I said, from a viewer's perspective, at least the Canadiens aren't getting blown out, and you're not watching a team like the San Jose Sharks or the Chicago Blackhawks who are getting blown out by 6, 7, 8 goals on every second game. But maybe for the long term it's not great, but at least we get to enjoy some hockey. What's your thoughts about that?
Well, it's actually funny you say that because I almost look at it as encouraging, right? I watch Senators games and I continuously tell myself, why do I watch these games sometimes? And I say, they actually can hang with any above average team. And whatever, I mean, we can have a conversation about this all day and how the Senators thought that they were out of the rebuild, and they sit behind the Canadiens in the standings right now, but they have guys like Tim Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, Drake Batherson, Shabbat, Sanderson. They have good hockey players on their squad. The Canadiens, on the other hand, outside their first line in Slavkovsky, Suzuki, Caulfield, and then Matheson, and getting above average goalie play out of Montembeault and Primo, the Canadiens lack a lot of firepower, right? Kirby Dach's injured, Newhook's coming back from injury, but these aren't game changers, at least for the moment. So it's encouraging to me to see that St. Louis is coaching some incredible hockey and he's keeping his team in games. And I think that if you look down the stretch and you look at the potential that this team has to do damage in the years coming, I think we can both agree that there's a high possibility that maybe not next year, but the year after that, they are contending for a playoff spot and might be able to actually do damage in those playoffs, because it's a team that's really coming up together and is united as a group and is really, really pushing to do damage as a group. So even though it's, we don't like to see those decision games where they go to overtime and go to shootout and gain unnecessary points, I think we can both agree that it's encouraging, considering that you don't want to be a team like the Sens right now where you're getting blown out and say we have no chance in any games we play.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. I don't think it's in the Habs. I want to say like just the Habs culture, it goes back to our name kind of. It's not in the Habs culture to be last. Other than that one season where we got Slavkovsky, our team was terrible, like absolutely terrible. And it's not because we didn't have the players, it's because we were dealing with so many injuries. And that was why we finished last place. But I think no matter how bad on paper the Canadiens roster looks, they'll never be a bad team, or at least not a bottom feeder team like San Jose, Anaheim, and Chicago, because it's just in the culture for us to always compete and never have a goal to lose games, right? I don't think any of the players on the Canadiens want to tank. I don't think Martin St. Louis wants to tank at all. I don't think Ken Hughes or Jeff Gordon ever have the idea to tank. So at the end of the day, I'm happy that we both get to be fans of such a great franchise that is never looking to lose. But then again, does that mean we're staying as middle tier team for the foreseeable future, right? So again, we can debate that all day, but at the end of the day, it's just nice that the Habs are still competing, and it's definitely encouraging to see that they're still pushing to win and showing a lot of promise, considering they don't have the best guys on their team like other teams like Ottawa and Columbus, who have a lot of prospects and a lot of rosterable young guys who have a lot of potential.
No, absolutely. And we've talked about it a few times, right? I think the difference between, you look back to the middle of the 2010s for the Montreal Canadiens, and I think that the biggest problem is that they were always a brink of the playoffs team. If they made it in, they were most likely getting bounced in the first round. And if they lost, then they ended up with a middle of the first round pick. And I don't think that was ideal for Canadiens fans, because you had guys like Nikita Scherbak, and you had guys like Michael McCarron, and you had guys like Noah Juleson, and no disrespect to these guys, and it probably doesn't help that the Canadiens development system wasn't great, or maybe isn't still great. But nonetheless, we can't take away from the fact that they were never drafting in that range where there was the cream of the crop, where the top players were being selected. Now I think, and that's where I'm kind of countering your argument and saying that I'm not saying that you're saying that we're still mediocre, but kind of just saying that this might be a little bit different than mediocrity, considering that we've drafted Slavkovsky, we've drafted Reinbacher, and obviously Caulfield was a more of a middle pick, but he was closer to the to one than he was to 31. And then you had Caden Gooley, which was obviously a middle round pick, but nonetheless, we're moving down. We're moving down, and I think that just means a sacrifice of this year, as we're going to see it, firsthand, and maybe the year after that. But after that, I think that the Canadiens are in a place where now they're going to have all these guys that are ready to compete. So I think that they're inching their way out of mediocrity, and hopefully by the end of next season, we won't be having this same conversation. We'll be having aspirations and saying, well, look at what we did this year with the roster we have. Now it's a question of if we can put everything, if everything comes together for another season, why can't we compete for a spot in that East or for a wildcard spot in the East? So obviously this is all speculation. Obviously we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but things to me, things are pointing in the direction that they're inching out of this phase. I don't know about you.
Yeah, you can definitely, although maybe not on, if you're comparing the standings from our team's position to last year, maybe it's not drastic. We're probably sitting around the same spot, but again, you can see it. These guys want to win, so that's all you got to care about. That's all you got to look at, and it's not like again, like I said before, we're not looking to lose games. But yeah, moving off that topic, unfortunately, Josh Roy, who was playing absolutely amazing, blocks an Evan Bouchard rocket. This guy has a howitzer of a slap shot. He blocks that shot. And unfortunately, it sounds like he shattered his thumb. So he's probably out the rest of the season, 4 to 6 weeks. Maybe he comes back for a Laval Rocket playoff run if they make it a little bit further, maybe 2-3 rounds in. But as of now, it looks like Roy is out for the rest of the season. That second line was really clicking with Armia and Newhook, and he was playing some good power play minutes, and overall just very strong 5-on-5 play. So now Raphael Harvey-Pinard hops up onto that second line, who only has 1 goal this season, by the way, compared to his 15 and like 33 last year. But yeah, your thoughts, implications on Josh Roy's injury?
I think it sucks. I think it's basically a tail of the tape for the Canadiens. This has been an ongoing thing for the past 2 seasons with man games lost. We've talked about it over and over and over again. And at what point do we say, like, this is out of the management, this is out of the player's hands? What are you supposed to do if you get injured? You get injured. It's just a question of how long these injuries last. And unfortunately, whether it's the Doc injury, the Newhook injury, the Dvorak injury, or even if you want to talk about now the Josh Roy injury, it sucks. And amidst these times where the Canadiens are not good and that they're at the bottom of the standings, you look forward to watching certain players play, Slavkovsky, Suzuki, Caulfield, but you also like to watch Newhook, Roy play and play well. And it sucks to see him go out with 9 points in 23 games, because that's almost a half point per game pace in his rookie season. He'll still probably be considered a rookie next year, considering he won't have met that threshold. But nonetheless, it sucks. And I think that, you know what? He's really impressed me. And I've probably came on here a couple times and said, I don't think that Josh Roy's game will translate to the NHL level due to the fact that I think he lacks creativity. And I thought that his hockey IQ was elevated. I think that showed at the Q level, at the World Junior level, but I was scared that the creativity aspect might not be there at the NHL level. But if there's one thing I've learned this season, whether it's through Joshua or whether through Jaden Struble, for example, the simpler you keep your game, the more translatable it is to the NHL. And Joshua has actually shown some creativity and some sparks with great shots and great passes. So honestly, nice to see a 5th round pick from the 2021 draft actually showing some signs of life in 2024. So
yeah, I mean, we got a little taste of it when he got to play at the World Juniors with Bedard. And that's really when, the potential started to look really promising. Had a really good season in the Q. Started in the AHL this season, was putting up almost a point per game pace, which is basically very rare as a rookie. Only a handful of guys, only a handful of top prospects for NHL teams can do that. After a quick little search here, I didn't get the correct amount of games or the exact amount of games, but the Canadiens, once again, for the 3rd season in a row, are top 3 in man games lost due to injury. So I think that speaks volume on why they're not having the most successful seasons. So very disappointing that he's injured. We can move off of that now.
Can I butt in here for a second? Just a quick
Yeah.
question. Now, this is absolutely a subjective topic, but I'm gonna throw it on to you anyway. If the Habs did not lose Kirby Dach this season, and presumably he ends up right, he played one game in a period. Is that right?
Played one game in a
If
period.
if Kirby Dach was sitting at the same amount of games as Suzuki, Caulfield, Matheson, Slavkovsky, so the full amount, 69 games. The Canadiens currently have 25 wins on the season. Do you think the Canadiens have more wins with Kirby Dach in their lineup?
I'm going to expand on your question. I'm also going to say, is Kirby Dach point per game? And first, I'm going to say, yes, Kirby Dach is point per game if he's still in the lineup, if he's on that power play one with Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, and Matheson. Second, 100% the Habs have more wins. I'm gonna even add on to that and say, if the Habs had a relatively full bill of health, if their top six is Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, Dak, Newhook, and we'll say Roy, we'll assume he comes in halfway through the season still, but I think the Canadiens have about five. What's their record right now?
They're currently
Let's be
25, 32, and 12.
I'm gonna assume their wins and losses are reversed. I'm gonna assume they're 32, 25, and 12. I truly believe that the Canadiens would be a much better team. And I feel like this is an obvious answer that if they're a healthy team, they're a better team. But I think they're pushing a wild card spot. Maybe not in a wild card spot, but they're pushing it, and they're very close if they are. You know, we talked to Habs Fan TV before the season started in the summer, and they predicted with a full bill of health, the Canadiens are a playoff team. Unfortunately, we don't get to see that happen. But in my opinion, after seeing how the Habs have played this season and the development and the steps Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky have taken, I believe that the Canadiens would be pushing a playoff spot, and Dak would be very close, if not point per game.
You know what's interesting to me, Liam? Is that the Canadiens were entering this season with Suzuki as the 1C, Kirby Dach as the 2C, and Sean Monahan as the 3C. Like, that's, again, barring injury, that's an amazing
That's
1, 2, 3, right?
And considering Christian Dvorak is there too,
Right.
you have a very strong top nine, in my opinion. There's so much room for development as well, which is why, this season could have been a really big step in the right direction. But dealing with injury, it takes a toll on your team, and it sets you back a season or two.
It's nice to see Kirby Dach back on the ice, though. He was with the team in Edmonton, if I'm not mistaken, shooting around before practice or after practice, whatever it was. So nice to see that he's committed to his rehab. And I think there was someone that pointed out that if players aren't committed to their rehab and don't want to get back and aren't eager to get back and are not grinding to get back on the ice, then I mean, yeah, of course the injury sets you back, but the player also needs to be committed to actually wanting to get back on the ice sooner rather than later. So it's nice to see that Kirby Dach wants to play hockey, and obviously he does. I mean, he's missed so many games over the past 2 seasons. Poor guy. But yeah, so that's encouraging. But yeah, that kind of transitions us to next season, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes. But I just wanted to take the chance here, Liam, to shout out our sponsors, at DraftKings. We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with code THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Okay, Liam, so you have a couple topics for us to take away there?
Yeah, quickly, I think we should just go over some stats maybe in the last 10 games. So, we'll bring it up on the screen here so that, you can get a closer look at, the exact numbers here. All right, looking at some stats here. Montreal Canadiens stats last 10 games, some player stats we can see. It's very nice to see that top line. All 8 points in 10 games. Cole Caulfield maybe standing out with only 1 goal, but at the end of the day, he's moving the puck. Maybe more of a playmaker nowadays. We tweeted out a couple nights ago, at Habs Culture on Twitter, by the way. is Cole Caulfield still going to be that 40-plus goal scorer that, we all expected him to be? Or is he going to be more of a 25, 30 goal, 40 assist kind of guy? And I think that's up for the fans to decide. Personally, I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Look, I think Caulfield will get back to his form. I think. Look, would I be happy with a 30 and 40 season out of Caulfield next year, for example, fully healthy? Absolutely, absolutely, I would. I'd be happy with that. But I don't think that there's a doubt in my mind that what we've seen from Caulfield out of the first two two seasons and change, two full seasons and change from Caulfield, that he has the goal scoring ability. He has a knack for finding the back of the net, and there's no doubt in my mind that he'll get back to that point. The way the puck, I mean, look, like you can even see it in his shot. His shot is strong. It's a good shot. It's just maybe goalies tend to be seeing it a little bit better right now when he's going through a dry spell. But when he's on, he's on. And we've seen that he might be maybe a streaky goal scorer, but who isn't in this league, right? So I'm not worried about it. He's also playing on a bottom 5 team statistically in the league. And yeah, maybe that first line is obviously flourishing, and Nick Suzuki is, almost point per game this season, which is absolutely incredible. But I think that when you bring everything together, and maybe next season when there's a more established power play and that first line is clicking for a second season in a row, I don't think there's a doubt in my mind that Caulfield scores 30 plus.
No, I definitely agree. I'd definitely like to see a larger sample size, but we'll see in the future what happens. So yeah, after the first line, all 8 points in 10 games, we don't have much to say after that, other than one thing that I'd like to point out is that Jake Evans has 4 points in 10 games and is a +2. And Arbor Jacki is also a +6.
I was about to say that. Liam, and sorry to chime in because I've been holding back this thought for a second now. Arbor Jacki has looked incredible since he's come back from Laval. And good for him. And again, another guy that's willing to put in the work and get better every single day. But a +6 on the Canadiens with 3 points in 10 games. Again, he's not known for his point scoring ability, but he's keeping his game so simple. And him and Savard look absolutely incredible together. Savard with 4 points and a +4 in 10 games. I mean, that's our designated second pairing right now, if you want to put it that way, right? Because you have Gouli and Matheson, then you have Kovacevic rotating with Harris and I'm missing the last guy on this list. Anyway, nonetheless, it's honestly pretty refreshing, and it's nice to know that the Habs brass did not give up on Jacki when they were getting offered a bunch of picks, because I think that this guy is like, you can't tell me right now, Liam, that game one, or let's say Habs have home ice advantage. Game one, Habs. I don't know who they're playing. Let's just say Habs.
Let's say it's the Bruins.
I don't know. Habs, Bruins, and you've got Jacki in your lineup. Like, that's a guy you don't want to mess with, and that's a guy that's going to bring the energy, and he's going to pump up the crowd. And look, I know hockey doesn't necessarily chalk up to strictly, a presence. Like, it's not necessarily about an imposing presence all the time, but he could play good hockey. He has a great shot, an absolute cannon of a shot. If you want to talk about a howitzer, he's got a howitzer, and he has a knack for getting the puck on net. And I mean, a +6 on the Canadiens in this economy is pretty ridiculous.
Impressive. And considering he's probably going up against a top six on another team, it's very impressive that he's staying positive in the plus range. Right. And well, that's the thing too. And I hope that teams are taking note, not even on Jacki, but on David Savard and his effect on the young defenseman, because that's valuable in itself. You gave the Stars gave up so much, not so much. They gave up a decent amount for Christian Tanev, and it's worked out. If you want to find a right shot guy that has those same traits and qualities, the blocking shots, the leadership, look no further than David Savard next year at the trade deadline. There you go. I mean, I guess it shows how important a vet presence is, whether it's Toronto who picks up Mark Giordano, or I don't know another,
or Joel Edmondson.
There you go, Joel Edmondson to the Leafs as well. So again, these vet presences are important for playoff runs. You can't just ride a decor of 24-year-old defensemen and under. So I don't know, maybe Savard is the long-term solution. But another stat I just want to bring up, shout out to the Habitant here for this interesting stat. This is a look at Slavkovsky's progression or point pace over the last, handful to large sample size of games. But so 7 points in the last 6 games, obviously very promising. 20 in the last 22 still after having a little dry spurt between February and March. And then if we're going down the list here, 36 in the last 54. Again, 75-point pace in the last 2 months. Let's expand on this. Little delay here. 75-point pace the last 2 months. 64-point pace the last 3, and 55 the last 4. It's not like we're taking a small sample size here. We're taking a large amount of games. A 55-point pace for a 19-year-old in the NHL. Absolutely amazing. 19
I'm not
years
complaining.
old. Yeah, can't complain at all. He just reached Mikko Rantanen's draft +1 year, I believe. So that would mean his second season in the NHL, or would it be draft +2?
That would be draft
+1?
+2. So draft +2 would be his second season in the NHL.
Okay, yes, draft +2. So just reach that pace. Obviously, you can't take much away from that. But I think the main thing to take away from it is that can't give up on a guy who comes into the league at 18 and gets injured. So very pleased to see Slafkovsky on this point pace.
Absolutely. I mean, look, we've been saying it since the season started. We've been saying it since last season. We've been saying it ever since he's been drafted. You're patient, good things will come out of it. And the truth is that the Canadiens have been patient with Slafkovsky. And even though there were times where we wanted to see him back in Laval, which I think was probably justified at some point in time, it doesn't change the fact that the Canadiens were smart about it. Insulated him properly by playing him with the two best players on the Habs, and gave him power play time, and clearly have been working on a lot of his skills, whether it's one-timer shots or puck retrieval in the corners, or just keeping his head up at certain point. Like Slafkovsky at the beginning of his career, in his first season last year through 40 games, was absolutely getting destroyed in corners. His head was down, and he looked like a deer in headlights. Like it was kind of ridiculous. Now I don't see him. Now I see him pushing other players around. He's the imposing threat on the forecheck. He's the guy you don't want to mess with in the corner. And this has all been within how many games? Less. I think he just recently played his 100th game. So you're looking at maybe 110 games total. I mean, come on. He's 19. I think down the line, this is the guy that you want to have in your lineup when you're competing in the playoffs, just like a guy like Jack-Eye, but at forward. So I'm really excited about that. And it's a bright spot in a pretty garbage season.
When he goes into the corners, it's actually like,
wonder what his puck retrieval rate is.
I'd actually love to know that. There's probably an advanced stat that we could find. We might have to hunt a little bit. But when he goes into the corners, it's like, okay, he's coming out with the puck and he's going to make the play. And I think that's super important. I mean, obviously any hockey player would know this and figure it out, but winning your puck battles is, the way you score goals, you capitalize on the other team's mistakes. So having a guy like Slafkovsky at his size and another guy like Kirby Dack, I think we're set to win some of these battles against the wall, and have that imposing forecheck that where we come out with the puck, and it's leading to more goal scoring opportunities. Do we want to look around or take a look around the league? Maybe some.
So you can pull that up. And in the meantime, I was just going to give an update on some of the guys that the Canadiens traded away at the trade deadline, in Sean Monahan and Jake Allen. We never actually got to talk about the Jake Allen move because we actually went live with THPN. Shout out to them at the Hockey Pod Net. And we went live with them for a few hours. We got to dissect the Jake Allen move live. So we won't go into too much detail on it, but just to give you a bit of an update, Sean Monahan has 15 points in 21 games with the Winnipeg Jets. He is a +4. That's 2 penalty minutes, a +4. And so I mean, keeping up his pace that he was doing. Yeah, right. You got to think.
With Toffoli as well. That's a beautiful top 9 even. So
yeah,
happy
top
for Sean
9
Monahan.
Scary.
Happy for Sean
Absolutely.
Monahan.
And do I dare even say Jake Allen's stats, because they are absolutely incredible.
Unreal.
So he's played 4 games with the New Jersey Devils. He is 3-1 in that span with a 1.76 goals against, 123 saves, and a 946 save percentage.
He's him. And it's crazy. It's crazy because they play like the Habs. Their defense is atrocious, New Jersey. They give up so many shots. This guy is facing, on average, more shots right now on the Devils than he was with the Canadiens. So maybe Jake Allen is the issue, or he's filling in the hole that the Devils had in goaltending.
Well, see, that's the thing is that when we talked about it, I think like obviously I was a little bit more okay with it because I thought, okay, if they're realistically, they're not going to be much of a playoff threat this year, but if they can fill that void now as a placeholder, I think it makes sense for the compensation that they gave up. But who knew that he would be playing at a 950 save percentage through 4 games with the team and single-handedly bringing them closer to a playoff spot, right? Without him in nets, they'd be absolutely screwed,
Well,
right?
I think this is a good time to bring up the standings here and check where New Jersey's at. So we have that white line that's covering it, but that's okay.
They are
At the bottom,
3 points out of a playoff spot with 2 games ahead of with two more games played than sorry, I'm a little lost here. Okay, I was looking at the wrong thing. Sorry.
yeah, they're actually chasing. They're probably chasing Detroit. They're the closest competition here, but so they're 6 points out.
Correct.
But I feel like they've been playing some good hockey. Maybe not since Jake Allen came. They're playing good hockey, or at least winning games right now. Probably not catching Tampa. You got to assume Tampa's making the playoffs, right? With all those guys. But it's really going to come down to what I think will be Philly, Detroit, and honestly, sleeper pick Buffalo. They've been playing some decent hockey. I know they've lost 2 in a row, but
They got smoked by Edmonton last night too.
Yeah. Well, did they get smoked? I thought
I think they ended up giving up 8.
What? No,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they lost 3-2. No.
No. I'll check it out, but nonetheless, they
give up 8.
Yeah, 8-3 to
Didn't
Edmonton.
even know that. Oh my
yeah,
god.
they went, and it was close for, I think it was 2-2 after the first, but nonetheless, they were playing good hockey. I think things are going a little bit downhill now. The wild card in the East is obviously completely up for grabs, but it's almost a battle of the teams that don't really want to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because again, like the Canadiens back in 2015, 2016, 2014, whenever it was, Canadiens were not a threat to win the Stanley Cup. Making the playoffs did not benefit them other than having a packed Bell Center on a Saturday night. So there's pros and cons, and obviously making the playoffs, you never know what can happen. You look at Florida last year, but nonetheless, I feel like if you're the Sabres, Devils, Islanders, Capitals, even Red Wings, but the Red Wings are kind of maybe a little bit more established, but you're kind of like shrugging right now because you don't know where you want to be, you don't know where you're heading. You're just trying to win as many games down the stretch as possible. But it's kind of nice to know that the Habs have more of a direction than these teams do, put it that way.
For sure. I'll ask you a question here for the playoffs. Assuming that every team that's in the the top 3 of their division, besides the Flyers, are locked in, which teams out of, I guess, so the Flyers and then all the teams competing for a wild card spot, which teams do you not want to see make the playoffs? I have my answer already.
Well, I think if there's one team that I didn't want to see make the playoffs, it would be, like you're saying, for entertainment purposes.
And yeah, fully entertainment purposes.
Fully entertainment purposes. Get rid of the Flyers for me.
Okay, so what team is winning or coming third in the Metropolitan?
I think. Oof.
See, it's tough because there's actually not many good Metro teams. Metro,
like the Flyers might be locked in there. I was just saying that purely from a standpoint where like I just wouldn't want to see them. No, now, I think if there was one team that would take their spot, I would. Again, I don't think the Capitals are very strong. They're playing great hockey down the stretch, and as long as Ovi's playing, and I want to see him in the playoffs. That's my take on that. The Isles, I think, have become a little like they don't play a fun brand of hockey, but I find there's a few players on that team that make it fun. I like Barzal, Dobson, Bo Horvat. I don't know. I don't really have like a straight up answer. Who's your answer?
Get rid of Philly. This is dream world, right? Maybe not realistic, but this is the dream for me in terms of entertainment purposes. Get rid of Philly. I find they're really boring. Although John Tortorella is really fun to watch, he's not on the ice, so can't do much about that. So give me New Jersey in that 3rd division spot.
They're gonna have a lot of ground to make up.
They will, but I wouldn't say it's impossible. They can go on a hot streak here. Jake Allen's proving that they can. If they win 10 of 12, they'll be at 92 points, and I would not put it past Philadelphia to choke. They're just not a good team. So,
I mean, they haven't been good recently, so.
No, and they're scratching their captain and that's a whole nother story to talk about. But give me New Jersey in that third spot. And then in the wild card, keep it how it is. I like Tampa and Detroit. I find Washington is really like literally not a chance to win any games if they make a playoff. I think if they
Right, but
play,
I don't think Detroit does either.
I think Detroit can upset whoever they play. I really like them. They just got Larkin back. When you're missing Larkin for 2-3 weeks, your team's
No,
gonna
you're not
change.
wrong. You're not wrong. But I mean, other than the Lion masterclass, I find that their goaltending's been pretty mediocre too.
Yeah, for sure. Their goalies are very mediocre, but
I
at
mean,
the
they
end of
also
the
have Justin
day,
Hall and Ben Sherratt, which just absolutely
yeah, and Jeff
scares the
Petrie.
life out of me.
So yeah, sure, whatever. But I want to see Patrick Kane in the playoffs.
Look,
You can say the same thing about Ovechkin.
but that's the thing. Push comes to shove. Ovi's now less than 50 goals away from Gretzky. Now that has nothing to do with the playoffs. But give me a motivated Ovechkin in that second wildcard spot with something to prove near the end of his career, with the chance of potentially. Well, look, realistically, he's not going to win another cup this year, but you never know. I guess, right? They're playing a good brand of hockey right now. You can't complain with that. That's the only reason that I would like to see them in the playoffs, is because of Ovechkin and what he brings to the table. Otherwise, yeah, I'd kick out Philly if possible, and I'd probably replace them with the Caps. I'm fine with keeping Detroit in that second wild card. I don't mind. New Jersey could be fun. I just think that truthfully, this season, even though Jake Allen's been good for the last 4 games he's played, I think they absolutely get trounced. Trounced.
Sure. There's guys like Jack Hughes, or those guys.
Yeah, exciting.
Exciting. I pay to watch Jack Hughes.
Sure, I agree. But at the end of the day, they are a soft hockey team.
Yeah, and they've lost Dougie. Their goalie
Right.
situation is completely flipped upside down, and their lines are weird. They don't
Like
play
I just find
young guys.
and that's why it's funny to dissect it, because I find their top 6. You look at Hughes, Bratt, Heishier. Well, Toffoli's gone, so now what they have? Holtz bumped up, Mercer, kind of like a jubilation of a bunch of things. But I just find, again, I just said it, but I just find it so soft. I mean, like, again, there's levels of softness, I guess, and I think that Jack Hughes is an absolutely gifted player. But like, you give, like, when New Jersey went up against the Rangers last year, right? And the Rangers came out on top in that series. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, the Devils did.
Okay, well, now I feel like a complete idiot.
But
But
it
I
was
was
a
about
completely different team too, right? You have a
Right.
really hot Akira Schmid and Vitek Vanacek. You have Dougie in your lineup. You have I'm blanking on some guys, but you have a completely different team. They dealt with a lot of injuries this year. They kind of remind me of this season Ottawa. They have all this talent, but they just can't get it done.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I was gonna say not the Rangers, but when they actually ended up going up against Carolina in the second round. And look, I'm so far from a Carolina lover in terms of their roster construction and all that stuff. But I think that, like, when they went up against them, it was like, okay, forget about it. Like, there's no chance. I'm even surprised that they made it out of the first round against the Rangers, though.
Considering they got all those guys trade deadline too. But okay, let's move on to the Western Conference here. This is I feel like it's more set in stone right now. Obviously, if we're looking at the Central Division, those top 3 teams aren't moving. The order of them will be, it'll come down to the wire, but it's going to be Winnipeg, Colorado, Dallas. Those are the 3 winners of that division. And then the Pacific gets a little bit more iffy, but Vancouver and Edmonton will be up there. And then it'll probably come down to the Kings or the Vegas Golden Knights for that 3rd division position. And then the wild card, I just don't see any world where any of these teams catch. Maybe Minnesota, because they've been playing decent hockey, but after the other night when they got blown out, 6-0 to LA, I feel like that kind of, put a pin in it, kind of ended their hopes there. But I really like Nashville. At the start of the season, both of us, I think me specifically, predicted them in like the losers or the bottom 2 of the Central Division. And they had an interesting offseason, getting rid of basically all their core guys in Duchesne, Granlund, and Johansson. Or I guess Granlund was the trade deadline, but it was like the commencement of the rebuild. But Barry Trotz comes in, brings in O'Reilly, brings in Gustav Nyquist, who's having an outstanding season, O'Reilly as well. And all of a sudden, they're on a 16-game point streak. 16 games for the Nashville Predators. They have one of the best decors in the league. They have a very good goalie who considering he hasn't been that good, it's pretty impressive. But if he gets hot, I feel like this team's scary.
Yeah, I like Nashville. I mean, I had them. I was just checking it out because you brought it up. I had them finishing fourth in the Central. Now, I had them ahead of Winnipeg, and I had Minnesota ahead of Nashville. So obviously, there's a lot of, but I still had them.
Yeah,
You know, I
still low.
ranked them pretty well. Yeah, look, I think you get a hot UC Saros, which we talked about at length about the potential that he might get traded. He was not moved. You get a hot UC Saros. You get a hot Roman Josi. Philip Forsberg is playing on a different level. Ryan O'Reilly brings something to the table every single game and season. So don't need to worry about him. And they're honestly getting some secondary scoring from guys that they probably didn't expect to get scoring from. So I think the fact that they're almost locked in, I would say that they're pretty much locked into a wild card spot there, is amazing for them. Now, who knows if they could do damage, because this Western Conference is very, I wouldn't even say it's pretty deep. I'd say, like, I would say that the winners of each division, those 6 teams are pretty strong.
I think it's going to be a very, very good first round in the playoffs for the West, because there's really not a team that is much better than the rest. You know, they all play against each other. They all beat each other. And I think it even goes down to Vegas and Nashville. They can all beat each other, maybe not in a 7-game series, but...
Well, that's what I find so fun. Like, how funny would it be if Vegas somehow missed the playoffs? Like, I think that would be so funny.
It would be very funny. But
I don't see it happening, but I would just... I think it would be funny after all these moves and, you know, the cap circumvention and whatnot. But let me ask you a question, and we'll probably end it off on this note.
Yep.
We've talked about our Stanley Cup winners-ish. If I recall correctly, you had Dallas versus...
I think I said Florida.
Okay, and I think I said Florida versus...
I think it was Dallas. I think we both came to
Did we? Okay, maybe that was
our... said the opposite.
Okay, fair. Yeah, I think I had Florida winning it. You had Dallas winning the cup and whatever. We are now 70 games into the NHL season. We probably said this near the beginning. We are now 70 games into the NHL season. My first question is, does your Stanley Cup championship matchup remain? And if not, what is your updated winner of the East, winner of the West?
I'm actually going to change mine. And it's because of the moves they made at the deadline. So I still have Florida. Actually, you know what? I might not even have Florida anymore. You're probably going to hate this because you're not a huge fan of the team, but I got Carolina.
You're going to say Carolina. Yeah, I saw that from
after those moves at the deadline. This is not even the team I was talking about with their moves at the deadline, but after their moves at the deadline, beating Florida 4-0 a couple nights ago, or like last week or something, and going 8-1 since Freddie Anderson has come back or something. Or yeah, I think they're 8-1 or 7-1. They're looking really scary, and I think they're going to come out of the East. And I now think Colorado is coming out of the West. That's a scary, scary team. They've been so hot. McKinnon's playing on another level. Rantanen's playing great again. They have some questionable goaltending some nights, but those bottom 6 moves, I love it. I absolutely love it, and I think they win a 7-game series against any team in the West, and they're my Stanley Cup champion. You surprised?
All right. Not really. I think it's a very... I'm more surprised by the Carolina pick, but I do agree with you. The moves did make sense. I now switch my West to Colorado as well. I think that there's, like, if there was any doubt that they lack depth, I think we can throw that conversation or that argument out the window. They made the necessary moves. You can't deny that. Right? But in the East, you said you were going Carolina. I'm still sticking with Florida. I think that they did exactly what they needed to do to maintain their level of play while also getting a little bit better. And I think that that's all they needed. They have the experience. They have the right players in Matty Tkachuk and Barkov, and they have a great decor. You can't deny that. And a hot Bobrovsky is
maybe
at times could be a top 3 goalie in the league.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe the best.
I would even say the league. So when he's hot.
Yeah, true.
When he's hot. So all of that to say is that I think they've developed a winning brand of hockey. I think that they know how to win. And I think that there's a lot of people, including myself and even yourself, that are counting out the Bruins because I just don't see it. Like, they're so dominant right now, and I almost feel like they're just about to fall into another curse of finishing first in the league. Like, that's where I see that trending.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you
But
can't get bailed out by goaltending every single playoff game, and that's the case right now.
right. And with that being said, Florida, Colorado, I'm taking Florida to win it. I don't know. I'm way too high on Florida. I think that their ability to put teams away early, I think their ability to hold on to leads. And yeah, obviously that they've lost a few questionable games. We've seen that just like any other team in the league. I mean, the Habs took the Bruins to overtime. And the Habs took Vegas overtime. Seems like a recurring theme there. But Florida's strong. They go out and pick up Tarasenko. They keep their core intact. The healthier, the better. And I think that there's another possibility for Florida to make it all the way to the Stanley Cup final. And this time, win it.
I like it. And now after all this, watch Philly and Nashville be our Stanley Cup final matchup.
Imagine. That would be funny.
That would be very funny.
Anyway, but I'm sure at some point down the road we'll do a little bit of we'll once the bracket is set in stone, we'll make a video on that and we'll go back and forth. We'll see if we can predict games, kind of like a March Madness of the hockey bracket. Not as exciting necessarily because there's not as many matchups, but I think we're a little bit more knowledgeable on that topic. But with that being said, Liam, this has been a fun episode. It's been fun to get back into it. Obviously, exams coming up, so we'll see how consistent we can stay, but you'll definitely see us one time before the playoffs roll around. Is there anything you wanted to add, Liam?
No, I think we covered a lot today. I'm sure we're gonna continue to stay consistent, continue to post videos on TikTok. Check it out. If you don't listen or you don't like listening to the whole pod, I mean, if you're here with us now, you definitely like listening to the whole pod. But if you want to just see some clips, go check out the TikToks. We're gonna be posting clips of it. Some of the highlights of the pod. But again, thanks for sticking around. Justin, final words?
Yeah, make sure to check out our social media, guys. We put a lot of effort and time into that, and I feel like I understand people that don't like to listen to 50 minutes worth of us yipping and yapping. So I totally get that. So it's always fun, interactive on those social media platforms. So be sure to check it out. But with that being said, this has been episode 77 of the Habs Culture Podcast. Thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in.